It's been 3 winters since Sena first teased their noise-canceling helmet. About damn time they made one. The Sena Momentum Inc. Integrated Noise Cancelling, aka Destructive Interference, aka the road, makes a sound wave like that. 4 microphones around the helmet hear it and decide to make a sound wave like that. Peak meets trough, and we hear. This makes perfect sense on a motorcycle because the steady drone of wind and engine noise is easy to predict and cancel out in real time. Meanwhile, the sudden spikes of a car horn, tire squeal, gets through unmuffled. 'Tis a ripe, low-hanging innovation. And kudos to Sena for picking our fruit, and shame on the actual helmet companies, Bell, Arai, Shoei, for not doing it first. So, 1 button to cancel outside noise,
INC on,
and then another to amplify it.
ambient on.
That may sound useless until you remember how difficult it is to have a conversation with your helmet on. Full disclosure, Sena's ear cups don't seal like earplugs or earbuds. The Momentum is quieter than any other helmet, but still louder than riding with plugs. Because it's a Sena product, we obviously have a comm built in, a 20S. Nothing too special, save the fact that you don't have to go all kindergarten cut and paste to install it. 3 buttons for the comm, memorize this owner's manual written by Leo Tolstoy, and you can make the buttons do a phone call, play music, GPS, chat with 8 riding buddies, less if they aren't all Sena loyalists. The usual comm stuff. Now, battery life requires some math because Sena says 20 hours of talk time, but we need to subtract the 25% import tax for bringing that figure into the real world. And then we lose about half this to the noise canceling function. So 7.5 hours. That's how long I can actually make the battery last. Speaking of which, this medium weighs 1,790 grams. In Imperial, that would be heavy. But I weighed a 20S setup at 160 grams, the INC around 100. So this would be a pretty light fiberglass bucket, if not for all the extra goodies. The weight checks out, maybe the cost will add up. Our helmet feels like a helmet built by an electronics company, so not good. Only 2 shell sizes to save cost, and plastics with all the quality of Kinder Surprise. I'd put this on par with like a $130 Scorpion R320. To add the 20S comm would be $350, and then we could get better soundproofing from a 50-cent pair of earplugs. So the total cost should be somewhere around not that. Doesn't make financial sense. Sena threw the kitchen sink ahead of its price tag, a pinlock visor, a velvet inflatable donut, velvet accessory pouch. Still not enough to distract from $800. But hey, they got moving on noise cancellation while every helmet manufacturer had their heads up their helmets. Sena deserves praise. Arai also did something commendable this year. They made a new helmet for merely $650, which to Arai is considered charitable. Up till now, you needed $1,000 to buy a proper Arai, and that left most of us on the outside looking in, wondering how the hell they could be so good. But the DTX will let a few more interlopers in on the secret. It's full Arai, 100% handmade in Japan, packed with all the goodies of their flagship lids, but at a more accessible price. So what is the secret? Mainly, it's FCS, Facial Contour System. Arai pads wrap underneath the jawline. That feels very reassuring. It sounds very quiet. The helmet still slides on easily thanks to spring-loaded supports. And pro tip for other manufacturers, when people put on an Arai and go, oh my goodness, I never knew a helmet could feel so good, FCS is what they're feeling. Arai is also obsessed with eggs. They invented something called VAS, where the shield sits on a variable axis. Rather than pivoting up here, it slides upwards on the hinge and then pivots. And that allows the whole side pod to sit lower down, so more of the helmet is perfectly egg-shaped. Oof. Also strong is the peripheral belt, a rigid loop around the forehead that allows for thinner EPS foam right at the top of your peripheral vision, which allows for a sharper viewing angle in that full tuck. Arai's pass Snell with flying colors. They have brow vents, which no one else does because that's a very expensive way to make a visor. They also have flared lower edges, keeping the center of gravity down when you're moving and making the helmet wider, easier to take off when you're not. The DTX doesn't do anything new, literally nothing, but if you've always been curious what $1,000 will buy you, this is a $650 way to find out. Our next pick earns its spot by killing my pet peeve. The Shoei GT Air is fat, ancient, and still costs $750. I find it irksome when helmets rest on their laurels, so was very glad when HJC took a swipe at it. First they tried with the RPHA 10 and then again with the RPHA ST. Both were decent attempted coups, but this year's RPHA 70 ST is the real regicide. They used their racing carbon shell PIM Plus to get the weight down to 15-20 grams, a good 10% below the GT Air. That extra strong shell also allowed the RPHA 70 to be narrower, while maintaining its neutral interior shape. It looks more racy than toury, especially with the emergency release cheek pads, this cinched upwards neckline, and the flat, optically correct shield. Optical illusion, that racy style, because this is indeed a touring helmet. Upright riding position, drop down, sunshade. The old ones failed to unseat Shoei because they had crappy sun visors on a really weak spring, but this time HJC did a proper cable mechanism and the lens is actually dark enough. HJC also ramped up their venting in hopes of taking down the king. This Mohawk is an intake and an exhaust in one, and it flows so much air. I find every other vent superfluous. Especially this bottom port, which does nothing and has its toggle inside the helmet. One accident and I'm gonna have open tattooed on my chin. Anyway, this is very typical of the whole RPHA line. And they take a well-known helmet like the annoying GT Air and make something with more holes, less weight, and about $250 cheaper. The inevitable downside is that RPHA lids are always louder than competitors. The RPHA 70 ST is no exception. But I still think it guillotines Shoei and firmly claims the title of top sport touring lid. Fashion. We had two style statements this year, the Icon Airflite and the Biltwell Lane Splitter. Both cost $350 and both are attractive to people who find them attractive. Aesthetics are subjective, so let's assume that you love how these look, therefore they are a thrilling success. Now I can tell you what's wrong with them. For the Icon, it's what we call an FML, freaking massive lid. It takes up a significant amount of Canadian airspace. It also comes in only 3 shell sizes, rather than Icon's usual 4, plus it's heavy. 1,720 grams makes it weightier than the Armada, the Alliance GT, the Airframe Pro, pretty much everything it should have improved upon. Obviously the visor is huge, that's why it looks cool, especially in chrome or any of Icon's 10 color options. Icon will be Icon. Don't be fooled into thinking there's any structural benefit for extending the face shield over the chin bar though. This makes it more vulnerable, more likely to be tugged open in a crash, heavier, and annoyingly present in your peripheries when riding al fresco. Of course it's not all bad, but mostly it is. The side pods whistle like a pair of Stuka dive bombers. The drop-down sun visor doesn't drop down very far. The fit is narrow, made narrower by the fact that Icon padding is stiffer and takes longer to break in. I like the lane splitter better. And there'd actually be nothing wrong with this helmet if it were half the price. See, Biltwell brags about using the same quality materials found in the Gringo and Bonanza. A polycarbonate shell and a hinged face shield. Such ingenuity. Problem is, the Gringo and Bonanza are a collective $300 cheaper. Or there's nothing wrong with a 1590 gram polycarb with but one exhaust and a vent that waterboards me in the rain, if it's cheap. Old school tech is only forgivable at an old school price. Like this hinge that works via a very advanced mechanism called friction. It is pretty. It also pulls the entire helmet up with it. When it's new, when it's old, it won't want to stay open at all. And there's also no spring to seal it shut, save for this little peg that Biltwell lauds as having little fanfare. Little fanfare or little cost? I suspect there are savings here that we don't see. Of course, the hand-painted eye candy is legitimately luxurious, but it belies monsters hidden in the dark. Like Biltwell's classic fit, which can also be read imprecise or roomy. Most people are best served by sizing down. Meanwhile, the chin strap is stuck illogically far back, an assault on the Adam's apple. I've seen tails pinned on donkeys with more precision than this. So, the two best looking helmets of 2018. Get this one if you can find a way to convince yourself that $350 is reasonable. And get this one if you can tolerate how big it is. Then we have a top touring and street helmet, both for middle prices, and a techie option. Thanks.